welcome, Tim, and thank you for coming to help us.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having me. Again, my name is Tim Depin, and before you cast me as some wash ashore coming down from Boston, I'm actually from the Cape. I'm from Dennis, so I always love getting down here to do a presentation, especially in the summer. It doesn't hurt that the weather's nice. But the bulk of our presentation today is about, as you can see, scams and identity theft. That's what we'll be talking about most. But to begin with, and with all of our presentations, we just like to do a little overview of the office on a whole, so you're aware of some of the services offered by our office. I'll also hand a page with all of the Attorney General's office hotlines out to everybody but at the end of the presentation. So if you hear something in this beginning portion and it seems like something you may want to give us a call about, you'll have the numbers right there. So to begin with, this is the Attorney General, Maura Healey. She was first elected in 2014, began serving in 2015, so she's finishing out her first term as Attorney General. And so to begin with, the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General is the chief lawyer and law enforcement officer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And really that's what most people are sort of aware of when they think of the Attorney General's office, right? When they think of the Attorney General's office, they know it's a law firm. They're aware that it's involved in some criminal prosecutions, some big civil matters, right? They may have, when they hear about it on the news. But one thing that Maura Healey, the current Attorney General, really saw when she was running for the office is that people weren't aware of the services offered by the Attorney General's office, how the Attorney General's office could help them individually. And frankly, it was the people who were sort of most in need of those services, could most benefit from our services, who were really the most unaware about them. So my division, the Community Engagement Division, was created to sort of be the link between the office and the community, right? Both to get information out from the office. We do presentations like this where we have some matter of expertise, to get the word out about our services, but also to take information back into the office, right? The things that are affecting everyone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we want to hear about that. And we don't just want to hear about it from the 1% of 1% who will call or write into a government office, right? Because we understand that that's not representative of everyone. We want to hear it from people out in the community, and so we try to meet them where they are, which we do events like this, but we also do events where we go to a church or a prayer service, another community organization, food pantries, things like that, where people are already going and we can sort of surprise them with information about the Attorney General's office and hear from them as well. So just a very brief overview of who the Attorney General's office serves and how we do it. To begin with, we serve residents of the Commonwealth and their public interest. If you reside in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the Attorney General's office is here to serve you. Now, an important caveat is that we're not allowed to be your attorney. We get a lot of calls into the office from folks who need an attorney, either a criminal matter or a civil matter or something they want to pursue, and they call our office to get an attorney, and we're not allowed to have that. We have many non-attorneys in the office, like myself, but our attorneys at the office are not allowed to be your individual attorney. That being said, we are there to represent residents of the Commonwealth, and we can talk about some of the non-legal services that we offer on the next slide. We're also the attorney for state departments, officers, and commissions. Another area that we get a lot of calls where we're unfortunately not able to help is when folks have an issue with another state agency, right? Let's just pick one out of the blue. Let's say they had an issue with the Department of Transitional Assistance. They come to us and they say, can you help me fix this issue? We're happy to give a referral. We're happy to try to call someone at another agency who can help them, but we're the lawyer for another state agency. So if you're having an issue with the state agency and it gets to the point where you were to sue that state agency, it'd be the Attorney General's office who is representing that other state agency, so it's difficult for us to really take on those types of complaints. In our last bubble here, we have groups of consumers. Consumer is just one word that we use. I mean, it could be groups of tenants, groups of workers, any issue that we handle. And the real reason we put that one up on the screen is just to be clear that something doesn't need to affect everyone in Massachusetts for the Attorney General's office to be able to take action. By way of an example, there was a debt collection law firm out in Waltham that was really harassing folks, calling them all the time and against the regulations in Massachusetts and fair debt collection laws nationally, taking people to court multiple times over the same debt, sometimes a satisfied debt, sometimes a debt that wasn't even this person, they just got the wrong person completely. So our office took action. We received a number of complaints about this law firm. We did an investigation. We sued this company and settled with that company for $1 million that we were then able to return to the affected consumers. I use that as an example because $1 million is a really easy number to remember. But I do think it illustrates well that not everyone in Massachusetts was contacted by this company. Not everyone in Massachusetts, not nearly everyone in Massachusetts was affected by it. but the AG's office was still able to take action in that instance on behalf of the Commonwealth as a whole. So what that represents is two of the ways that we do our work. That's investigation and enforcement. That's what you expect from a law enforcement agency. We have investigators within our office, and we have attorneys within our office that will follow through in court. Where I spend most of my time is on the lower end here in prevention. We do a lot of trainings, or we try to do a lot of trainings to prevent these types of issues from happening right before a consumer or a worker is affected. We try to make them aware of their rights. It's specifically very important in the context of what we're talking about here tonight. Once you're scammed out of your money, there's an almost 0% chance that you'll get that money back, right? Really the only way to protect yourself is to know how to prevent it from happening. Identity theft's much the same way. There are some steps you can take after the fact, but really it's much better if you can prevent the ill effects from happening before they do. And finally, policy. The Attorney General's office doesn't write the laws. That's obviously the state legislature's job, but we have a policy team that works with the legislature, specifically on issues that we get a lot of complaints about or we hear a lot about. And there are some instances where the Attorney General's office promulgates regulations, right? So you may remember the earned sick time law that passed about 4 years ago now. The voters passed that law. It was a couple paragraphs of text. It was then on the Attorney General's office to create regulations that showed, what employers had to follow, right? So the employers knew what they had to do, and that workers were aware of their rights in some more detail. So I do just want to highlight one of the bureaus in our office, and that's our Public Protection and Advocacy Bureau. I highlight this one because it's really the most forward-facing bureau. If you have an issue that the Attorney General's office can help you with, it's most likely going to be in this bureau. Some of the divisions that we have here are Civil Investigations Division, right? A civil matter investigated by them. Our Consumer Protection Division. These are the two divisions that worked on that debt collection case that I just mentioned on the last slide, the consumer protection issues. Our Fair Labor Division. So in Massachusetts, if you're not paid at your job, you're not paid the right amount, you're not given your sick time, you're not paid out your vacation time, you don't receive your last paycheck, anything like that, before you can pursue that matter in court, you have to file with the Attorney General's office. You file with the Attorney General's office, we'll either take it on ourselves or give you what's called a private right of action letter that allows you to pursue it yourself. So our Fair Labor Division gets 7,000 complaints a year from workers who were not paid in some way. Our Insurance and Financial Services Division, if you're having an issue with an insurance company, not paying out the right amount, the premium's not calculated correctly, whatever it may be, you can file a complaint with our Insurance and Financial Services Division, and they have a mediation process where they can call that company on your behalf and try to work things out, right? So it doesn't get to a point where it needs to go to court to help you try to avoid something like that. Civil Rights Division, if there's an issue of discrimination, you can file a complaint with our office. Obviously, there's also the Mass Commission Against Discrimination, which is another state agency, but you can start with our office as well. And then finally, you see down here what we call our CARD division. It's the Consumer Advocacy and Response Division. That is the most forward-facing division of our office. You get the most complaints, almost 100 complaints a day come into that division. And really any consumer issue that you're having, any issue you're having with a business, right? You as an individual that's having an issue with a business, if it's a retail purchase, if it's an automobile purchase, if it's you're a tenant, you're having an issue with the landlord, if it's your mortgage company that you're having an issue with, you can give them a call, you can file a complaint, and they have a consumer advocacy service where they reach out to the business on your behalf and try to resolve the problem. Again, they're not your attorney, so we're not saying that a company has to do something, we're not threatening legal action, but we're trying to resolve problems before it gets to that point, right? By way of an example, let's say you go to an electronics store, you buy a TV, you get home and the TV doesn't work. You try taking it back to the electronics store, they won't take it back. They say you have to call the main number. You call the main number, you're on hold for 45 minutes, finally you don't get the right person, right? That's a perfect example of a good time to file a complaint with our office. We can call that business on your behalf, and one, because it's the Attorney General's office calling, we find that they're a little more likely to do work with us, but two, and I think almost more importantly with these big companies, is we just know the right person to call, right? We've had hundreds of these complaints. We have a system, we know who to email or call, so that we're able to take care of this and then help you out. So you'll see that phone number on the sheet that I pass out, but yeah, again, they get hundreds of complaints a day and they're able to really help folks with some issues that don't require full legal representation. Finally, where are we located? So this is our full-time offices where you can walk in, and our staff full-time. We have two offices in Boston actually, which is where I work. We have one in downtown Worcester, downtown Springfield, as well as downtown New Bedford. The thing I'll add to this is, my division, the community engagement division, will go anywhere that you'll have us, right? So, you're not going to need to go all the way into one of these offices. We also have local consumer programs that are grant funded by our office. I believe there's one in Hyannis where you can go in and they offer the same services as our card division that I mentioned on the previous slide. All right. So now we're going to get into the meat of our presentation here. And one caveat I just want to say before we get started is this is a presentation that was created at a time in our office where we were trying to get away from too much text on slides, right? We are an office full of attorneys, and our PowerPoints looked like they were written by an office full of attorneys, right? Lots and lots of text. So we tried to get more pictures, we tried to make it more visually interesting. I think it works, although I think on some slides we may have gone too far in the other direction, right? Maybe not quite clear enough. So if at any point something's unclear, I'm going to do my best to explain it. But if at any point something's unclear, please let me know and I'll do my best. So scams and identity theft, what's the relationship there? Really, a scam can go in one of two ways. There's a scam that's just after your money. That's the short con. The scammer contacts you somehow, they get you to pay them some amount of money, and then they're done with you. They may try to scam you again because they've scammed you once, but they got your money, that's what they were after. You're out the money, that's really unfortunate, but they can't do anything further. They didn't get enough information about you to do anything further. There's also the identity theft, right? Where a scammer or a data breach, we'll talk about some of these examples later, get your personal information. This is the long con, right? They have your personal information. They have things like a social security number that's not going to change in 60 years, right? They can get you later for that. And they can steal your identity. They can use your identity to get money from you at a different point, right? So when you're scammed for your personal information, you're not out the money initially, which is good, but you do have to be more vigilant from that point forward, because it could come at any time. So we have some golden rules to begin with, some tips to begin with. The golden rule, if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is too good to be true, right? Unfortunately, you don't just wake up and win $1 million in a lottery that you didn't enter in, right? I wish it was the case. I like to add one thing to this, which is sometimes if something sounds too bad to be true, we also want to apply a level of skepticism. I don't want to apply my thought process on everybody here, but if something sounds too good to be true, I'm thinking that I'm going to see through it. But sometimes when something sounds too bad to be true, there's a loan that I owe that I forgot about, and now the police are after me. For whatever reason, I lend a little bit more credence to that. We just really want to be very careful whether something sounds too good to be true or too bad to be true. And just some general consumer tips. You always want to read the small print. You always want to guard your personal information. And you always want to do your research before you agree to anything. So this is an example of what I'm talking about, right? It might not be very clear from the beginning here what we're talking about, but these are some different types of scams. Our friend in the upper left-hand corner, what he's there to represent is a phishing scam, right? He is a fish with an F, but we're talking about phishing with a PH. And a phishing scam is when someone is trying to get your personal information, generally by pretending like they already have it. Right? The classic example of a phishing scam is you get an email from your bank that says you need to update your account number and your password. And because it looks like it's from your bank, you just do it, right? But that's a phishing scam. Many times that's a phishing scam, right? They don't have that information from you. You're not verifying yourself to them. They're taking it from you for the first time. So if anything ever, in general, never give out your personal information unless you absolutely have to. But specifically when something comes into you unsolicited, right? You get an email or you get a phone call and they're the ones contacting you. Why do you have to prove yourself to them, right? They're the ones that contacted you and got into contact with you, so be very careful with those. The pyramids here are for pyramids or multi-level marketing scams, a slightly different category, but we get complaints of this in the office where you buy X amount of some product, right? And then you find 5 people to buy from you, they find 5 people from buying to them, right? And next thing you know, you're a millionaire because you're getting some percentage on all these. What we find happens most often is that you're out thousands of dollars and you have a garage full of whatever product that you bought. So if you do find yourself in something that seems like it might be a pyramid scheme, multi-level marketing scam, that's one where you can absolutely file a complaint with our office. We can see if we can help you out with that. Lottery scams are one of the biggest types of scams that we see. We'll talk about some of a specific version in depth a little bit more on another slide, but just to begin with, the best way to protect yourself from a lottery scam is just to know that you should never have to pay money to win money, right? If you've won money and they say, oh, well, you need to pay taxes on that, send us $5,000. Well, they can just take that $5,000 out of the $1 million that you won, right, before they send it to you. You don't need to send it back to them. And finally, our friend over here seems very excited. Hopefully he's not about to be scammed with a lottery or something to that effect, but computer scams. And computer scams are really rising. I would say computer scams are where we're seeing, if not most of our complaints about scams, they're catching up very quickly to the phone and telephones, the phone and mail scams. So methods used to scam, again, it's really how anyone can get into contact you. If someone can use a method to contact you, then unfortunately they can also use that method to scam you. We'll talk about door-to-door scams later on in the presentation. I put them in a slightly separate category because with most of these scams, you're interacting with someone who's not on Cape Cod, not in Massachusetts, likely not in the country, right? They're almost impossible to find again. With a door-to-door scam, you are interacting with someone who's actually right there, right? So they're just in a slightly different category and work in a slightly different way. Internet scams, like I mentioned, really growing. I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, more people are getting online, but two, more people are feeling more comfortable online. Right? I think we all remember when you first got on a computer, right, and everything seemed new and everything seemed kind of dangerous about it, and you would call someone who had a computer before you, is this normal, is that normal, right? You get comfortable, you stop doing that, you think you know what you're doing on the computer, and many times that's sort of the most dangerous time to be scammed, right? Because you think you know what you're doing, but there are still some things where they might be able to get you. Phone scams, we still hear the most about phone scams, right? I think it's for two reasons. There may be more phone scams than any other type of scam, but frankly, phone scams are more annoying than any of the other types of scams, right? We can ignore a piece of mail, we can ignore an email, but we can't ignore our phone ringing off the hook, so I think that's one of the reasons why we hear about those the most. And these final two here, mail and those credit card offer scams, again, something like a credit card offer, know who you're dealing with before you send any of your personal information in, right? You don't want to, you think you're getting a credit card, but actually giving your social security number to a scammer. With mail scams, it's the same general ideas, right? You don't want to give any of your personal information or give any money unsolicited when it comes into you like that. And if something does have any of your personal information on it, the best idea is probably to shred mail with that type of information on it. Is it likely that someone is going to rummage through a dumpster to find your personal information? Probably not, but it could happen, right? And so it's best to protect ourselves as most as possible. So, as I've alluded to, scams really work in one of two ways, which is they will either say that you've won money, right? Something good is happening, and they're hoping that they make you so excited that they bypass your rational thinking and you just buy into the story that they're selling. Or they're going to ask you for money. They're going to say you owe money, and they're hoping that you get so nervous and so afraid that, again, it bypasses your rational thinking and you buy into their scam. So the most common example of the give you money scam is something that's called the fake check scam. And how this scam works is you get a check in the mail. It could be because you won the lottery. It could be because you were part of some class action settlement. We have instances where they say they're from the Attorney General's office and you were in a settlement from our office. However, it's coming to you, the scam is going to work in the same way, which is they're going to have you take that check and deposit it into your bank account. And within about a day or so, the bank is going to make those funds available to you. It's going to look like the check is cleared. They will at the beginning ask you to take some money out of the check that you just deposited and give it back to them. They'll call it taxes, they'll call it fees, they'll name it something. And it's usually going to be a small amount, right? They're not going to give you a check for $5,000 and say, well, we need $4,900 of this back, so can you cash this check and give it back to us, right? They're not going to do that because people are less likely to do that. They're going to take a small percentage. They're going to ask for $200 out of that $5,000 check. And so you'll take that money out, or they're hoping that you'll take that money out, and they'll then, and this is a real red flag for scams, ask you to send it to them through some untraceable form of payment, right? They don't say, write me a check. They don't say, come meet me on the street corner with cash, right? Any way that you could get into contact with them. They'll say, you can do a wire transfer to me, right? Something like Western Union. You can go to CVS, get a MoneyGram, send money that way. The real one that we're seeing a lot now, the most common one, is they have you buy iTunes or Walmart's gift cards, right? They have you buy gift cards, and then they have you read the numbers over the phone, and they have some way of taking the money off of those cards, right? And that's how they get the money from you. So you send them that money, everything seems good for a couple days, but within about a week or so, what the bank is going to find is that it was a bad check. They get to the end of it, there are no funds behind it, so where does that leave you? Well, you didn't get the money that you thought you won, which is disappointing, but not really all that bad. You're out the money that you sent to them, so whatever percentage, whatever money they had actually came from your real money. It didn't come from the check that wasn't actually a good check. You may go below a zero balance in your account. We've seen instances where people do it in an account they don't use that often, or they don't keep much money in checking, and they go below a zero balance, and when they need to pay bills, right, or they need to buy groceries, that can be a big deal, as well as the fees that can be incurred, right, if you go below a certain level in your bank account. And sometimes even if you don't go below a zero balance, the bank is going to freeze your account, right? Because from the bank's perspective, what you did was you tried to pass a bad check and then immediately took some portion of that money out of your account, right? Now, most banks realize that the fake check scam is a thing, right? They already know that, and so they'll be quick to work with you, but still, in the moment, if you need to pay bills, you need to buy groceries, whatever you need to do, it's important that your account is not frozen. So the best way is to avoid a fake check scam. Again, as I said about the lottery scams at the beginning, you should never have to pay money to win money. If it's the lottery, you need to pay taxes, they can take it out before they send it to you, right? If they say you're a part of some class action settlement, well, I don't know any law firm that reaches a big settlement, sends all the money out, and then hopes that people send money back into them, right? They take their cut right off the top. I mentioned at the Attorney General's office, we work so closely, everybody has a certain amount down to the cent that we send out to them, right? So we're never going to ask for money back like that. The other important thing is to independently verify the information that's being given to you. Many times when you get this check in the mail, with it will be a letter that explains what the check is for, right? And oftentimes on that letter, there'll be a contact. You can go to this website or you can call this phone number if you have any questions. You don't want to call the organization on that phone number. That phone number is also part of the scam. One of the big things that they'll do is they'll use organizations that you heard of, right? They'll use the lottery. They'll use something like Publishers Clearinghouse, right? That's a really big one. They'll use the Attorney General's office because people are aware of it, right? It gives them some credence. So you don't want to call them on that phone number that they give you. You want to look up a different phone number, independently verify that what is going on is actually the case, right? We'll get calls in the office from folks who have received the settlement check and say, is this check real? And on the good times, we're able to tell them, yes, that is actually your check. That is actually your money. You can do that. But sometimes we have to tell them, no, we did not reach a settlement about that. It's a fake check. But still, that person's doing the right thing. They're independently verifying what they're asking for. Again, so that's really give you money scams that ask you for money. One of the big ones that we see is what's a victim letter or call. Sometimes it's also called the grandparent or grandchild scam. How this one works is you get a call from someone either pretending to be a police officer or pretending to be your grandchild, your niece or nephew. They've gotten in trouble, they've been in an accident, they've been arrested, and they need you to send bail right away, right? This is probably my least favorite type of scam because it's so clear to me why in that moment you wouldn't be able to stop and think about it. You just want to give the money to help out your relative. But again, with these, you just really have to be careful. Think through, is my grandchild in this faraway city or town that they say he is, right? Would a police department accept a bail payment in iTunes gift cards? And if you start, poking holes in it, right, you're going to see pretty quickly that their story's not going to hold water. But it's really hard to do that in that instance, and I understand that. But if you do get a call like that, again, something that seems too bad to be true, as hard as it is, taking the extra 30 seconds to call another relative or try calling their grandchild on their actual phone number, might save you a lot of money or might save somebody a lot of money. The lesson I've taken from it, because this actually happened to a friend of mine, his grandmother was called and said, your grandson has been arrested in Montreal and you need to send bail right away. And I guess maybe he was, having a little bit of wild time in his life, because this rang pretty true when his grandmother called his mother, and she called him and said, "What are you doing in Montreal? And how did you get in trouble?" Right? And he wasn't there. He was away at school. But they did the right thing. They started that chain. They got to the bottom of it, and his grandmother thankfully wasn't scammed. With these scams, most of the scams we've been talking about so far are wide net scams. They just call thousands and thousands of people. They really don't have any information about you aside from perhaps your name and obviously your phone number. Sometimes the grandparent scams, they get a little more detail, right? They'll use things like Facebook. They'll see that you have a grandchild who goes to Florida State. So when they do the grandparent scam, it's not just any police department, it's the Tallahassee Police Department, right? So they can find that type of information out about you. And again, it's important to still know that and know that you still want to check it out a little bit more. Again, the biggest one that we see, or biggest type that we see is these scammers that are posing as a government or a bank, right? Why do they do this? Because almost everyone interacts with the government, and most people interact with a couple different financial institutions, right? The big banks. So the example of this is, I'm sure we've all gotten a call from the IRS that says that we owe back taxes, right? How it generally works, you get a call from the IRS, they say you owe us taxes, usually from some year far in the past, right? They don't pick last year's tax returns because you might know those pretty well, but 6-7 years in the past, they'll say that. They'll say you owe some exorbitant amount of taxes, right? You owe $10,000 in taxes. We're sending the police after you. We're gonna, you're gonna take you to court tomorrow if you don't pay me. And that's usually when they offer you this lifeline, which is, well, you owe $10,000 worth of taxes, but we'll settle right now for $3,000 worth of taxes, right? And they hope that they've gotten you so riled up and so nervous that you don't think through their story, right? You don't think, well, I know that I did my taxes well, or I know that I had an accountant do my taxes and he or she has always done a good job, or a friend who does my taxes and has always done a good job, or in my instance, there's no way I could have made enough money that year that I could possibly owe $10,000 worth of taxes. They hope you don't think that, and you just buy into the scam and send them the money. One thing that they'll do is a technique, it's called spoofing. It allows scammers to put any phone number that they want to pop up on your caller ID, right? The most common use of spoofing, I think we're all aware of, is you get a call from a local phone number, right? It's your area code, it's 508, right? It's then oftentimes your exchange as well, and the last 4 numbers are the only thing that are different. The thought process is that they're a local number you're more likely to pick up than a number from across the country. In terms of the IRS scam and other scams, these spoofers will use it to try to lend a little bit more credence to their story, right? When they're calling you as the IRS, they're not calling you from Montana, they're calling you from a Washington, D.C. number, right? You'll see the same thing with the fake check scam. When they send you that check, they'll look up the address of the state lottery or the law firm or whatever they want to say that they are. It's these little details that they can control, right? If you choose to look at the things that make sense, you may be able to convince yourself that it's a good story. But if you get back, you stated the big details, right? Like the IRS never calls you and threatens you about a debt. They always send you a letter first, or unfortunately, we don't just get checks in the mail every day for money we haven't done anything for. You stick to those big details, you're generally going to be able to sniff out a scam. Things about also be aware of debt consolidators, right? If you're having an issue with credit card debt, or a friend is, it may seem like it makes sense to go to a debt consolidator and take all their credit cards, put it into one loan, and hopefully get it settled for less. We unfortunately see a lot of instances where folks are in, say, $15,000 worth of credit card debt. They go to a debt consolidator who says, I'll take care of it for $5,000, and then we see people who are now $20,000 in debt, right? Whenever you have to do such a high payment up front, you just want to be really careful about those. And confirm personal info, and we've talked about this a number of times, but they act like they already have your personal information, and they're going to try to sign you up for other services with that information. Just some examples of internet scams that I want to touch on. We'll see a lot of social networking scams. So you'll be on Facebook. Someone will add you as a friend that you don't know in real life, right? They'll probably talk to you for months before they ever ask you for anything. Sometimes these are just friendship. Oftentimes these are also romantic, unfortunately. So folks really think they're in a committed, honest relationship with someone, and then they want to come visit, right? They want to come visit you, but they can't afford a plane ticket. So they ask for you to send $700 so they can fly here. Well, don't you know, they buy the ticket, they're coming August 8th, right? They're coming August 8th, but August 8th comes and they're in a car accident. It's not too serious, they had to go to the hospital, but they missed the flight, right? They really want to come visit though. So 2 weeks later, they're gonna come, and then, well, don't you know, their mother's in the hospital now, right? There's a health scare, and so, unfortunately they missed that flight too, and they just never buy flight insurance, so you have to keep sending them the money, right? So you just really want to be careful with anything like that. Someone you don't know asking for money. The real point I like to make on this one is with all scams, but specifically with this scam, there's really a deep amount of shame that comes and embarrassment with being scammed, especially when you think someone is a friend or a potential romantic partner. If you see a friend, a relative who seems to be spending a lot of time talking to someone you don't know on Facebook, right? Ask questions, talk to them about it, try to get them sort of out of their shell about it, because many times shedding light on it, another person knowing about it, can help them from being scammed further and help them from, if they have lost some money, from losing even more money. Online classifieds, as I said, when you're buying something, you want to be careful about sending too much money out ahead of time without really knowing what you're getting. If you're selling something, you just want to be careful about how much information you're giving about yourself, or that you're sending them a product and you're never getting that payment back. We do put renting up here as well, because we've seen a lot of instances where folks are let's say they're subletting a portion of their house, or they're subletting an apartment. They want to sublet it for $700 a month. They're looking for first month and last month as a prepayment coming into them. They're doing this on Craigslist, so someone is interested, someone sends in the payments, but rather than sending $1,400, they send $2,800. Right? They say, oh, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. I thought you wanted a security deposit in another month. Can you just cash that check and then send me the extra back? Right? I don't want to have to write you a new check. And that's a fake check scam, right? That's another way into the fake check scam, where someone has sent you too much money and then you're sending it back. So you just want to be careful about that whenever you see anything like that. Employment is a general rule. If you have a job online, you're employed online, but you didn't have to file any paperwork, right? You didn't have to fill out any forms for payroll or anything like that. There's a good chance that that might be a scam, so you just want to be careful that you're not doing work for free there. Payday and online loans, if you're getting a loan online, make sure you're reading the small details there, the fine print. Also, we have up here the usury statute is 20%, so if someone wants to charge more than 20% interest, they actually have to tell the Attorney General's office. That's another function of our office, so you can give us a call and see if they're licensed to charge that much, but you also may want to be careful if you're taking a loan that's over 20%. Then free trial offers, we see this a lot, specifically with healthcare products. You'll get a free trial of some sort of beauty or healthcare product, and it will be free the first time and it comes, and you get that one at the beginning of the month, and you use maybe 5% of what they sent you, and then another one comes in the mail the next month, and with that one it's an $80 charge, right? And you've signed up for some sort of recurring payment. That's an example where we really could file a complaint with the Attorney General's office, and hopefully we'd be able to help you out there. Door-to-door scams. So like I said, these are in a slightly different category because you're actually physically facing and talking to the person that you're dealing with. We have a couple examples here. Newspaper subscriptions, right? People come in collecting for charity. Home improvement is really the big one. And my major point on this slide is two things to know with door-to-door scams and when you're purchasing things from someone who's selling them door-to-door. The first is that you have a right to a written contract, right? So if you're having a contractor's going door-to-door and is offering to do something to your house, they may try to pressure you into not writing it down, right? It could just be that they want to move quickly and they don't want to spend the time writing a contract. But should something go wrong in the process, they don't do what they've promised to do, they say they're going to paint your house and they only paint half your house, right? Really having that written contract will help you out going forward, that it was written down. And two, know that in door-to-door sales, you have a 3-day right to cancel. So a lot of people think you have a 3-day right to cancel in everything, and in Massachusetts you don't. There are certain areas where you do. But the big one is that when someone comes to your door, you have a 3-day right to cancel. So let's say someone came to your door and you agreed to it because you wanted them to leave, right? They were kind of lingering, hanging around, really pressuring you into it. But after they leave, you decide, I didn't actually want them to do that work. I don't actually need that work done, or I agreed to more than I wanted. I wanted them to clean my gutter, but I didn't need them to reshingle my whole house, right? Something like that. You have a 3-day right to cancel, and that 3-day right to cancel is written out in the contract. How you have to do, what steps you have to take within the 3 days should be written in the written contract. It's another reason to get that written contract and why that's important. Another big area that we've seen, folks had the companies coming door to door, trying to sell the third-party energy suppliers. We've seen a lot of that, a lot of complaints about that at the office. Essentially, many times these people say that they're with Eversource or National Grid. In reality, what they are, the energy market in Massachusetts is deregulated, right? So the supply can come from anyone. Anyone can supply your electricity to these companies. And so that's what they're trying to sell you. National Grid or Eversource is still the one that's delivering your electricity. So they're the ones, that's the one that's still coming to your house. Just be very careful with these types of companies when they come to your door. Know that Eversource and National Grid are actually not allowed to make a profit on your supply of electricity. They buy it at wholesale rates twice a year. These companies are only giving you the supply, so thinking about that, maybe they're buying it a lot cheaper and you still make money, but just so you know that they're trying to make a profit on the supply. And also know, and I'm sure everyone here is aware, that your electric price is really set twice a year, right? In January, it's generally a little bit more expensive than it is in July, where you're paying per kilowatt hour. So especially in the springtime, we'll see these companies coming, trying to sell you electricity, promising you a lower rate, locking you into a 9-month contract. So maybe you are saving money for those first couple months, but then you end up losing money the rest of the year. Our office, the Attorney General's office, did a study, and we found that in 2 years, 2015 to 2017, folks who switched to one of these third-party suppliers actually lost $175 million versus folks who had stayed. So our office called for an end to the industry. I don't believe the legislature has taken action on that yet, but just something to be aware of and something I know happens a lot door to door. So where to report scams? You can obviously talk to the Attorney General's office. We're happy to hear about scams, and in many ways it's actually very helpful to us that when I do these presentations, I'm talking about actual current scams and not scams that were popular 2 or 3 years ago. But it's difficult for our office to really investigate them, again, because these folks are not in Massachusetts and they're rarely in the country, and that's what makes them so hard to investigate in general. So we generally refer people to the federal level. For telephone scams, you can call the Federal Trade Commission. For mail scams, it's the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. And for internet scams, excuse me, it's a website. It's IC3, the letter I, the letter C, and the numeral 3.gov. It stands for the Internet Crime Complaint Center, and it's run by the FBI and the Department of Justice. You can report those internet scams. So then quickly, just want to make sure that we also get some time to talk about identity theft, and I leave some time for questions at the end as well. One analogy that we use for identity theft is that in many ways it's like getting sick, right? You can see the viruses, the scams that get you sick, the symptoms and consequences, how you know it and what happens afterwards, and remedies and how you protect yourself. But the real reason I like to use this analogy is because there's a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself from getting sick, right? You can not be around people who are sick, not shake hands with someone who just sneezed in their hand, right? Not go outside when it's cold with a wet head of hair and everything else that we've been told our whole lives. You can do those things, but if you're living in the world, right, chances are you can still get sick unless you completely shut yourself off. And the same is true of identity theft. You can do a lot of things like we talked about, not give out your personal information, be very diligent about that, but we have instances like the Equifax data breach where Equifax, a credit reporting agency that you may have done business with, you may not have done business with, still they had your personal information, didn't protect that information. And almost half of the country, right, 3 million people in Massachusetts may have had their information compromised by Equifax. So even if you did everything perfectly, a scammer could still have your personal information, you could still be the victim of identity theft. So in many ways that's scary to think, right, that there's no way to protect yourselves 100%. But I do choose to view it, and it can be instructive, it can be a constructive thought, because we all need to know that none of us is above identity theft. None of us is doing everything so well that there's no chance we get our identity stolen. So it's important for all of us to know some common sense steps to take to protect ourselves. To begin with, how might you know that you're the victim of identity theft? There may be bank transactions that you don't recognize on your accounts. You may get a call or a letter from a debt collector. That could also be a scam, but it could be a sign of identity theft. You may find out on your credit report, and we'll talk about that in the next couple slides. Tax return is a big one, and a lot of ones folks may not have thought of. You'll go to file your taxes, and the IRS or the Department of Revenue will tell you, oh, well, you already filed your taxes, and we already sent you your return, right? A scammer has filed taxes in your name to get money sent to them. It's why one thing that we've suggested in light of the Equifax breach is folks file their tax return as early as possible, because these scammers may try to do it, and it does create a headache. And then mail, bills, medical bills, bills you don't recognize, all signs that you may be the victim of identity theft. So what do you do? The first things to do if you feel that you may be the victim of identity theft, or you know that you're the victim of identity theft, is to file an identity theft complaint, or it's sometimes called an identity theft affidavit. That's with the Federal Trade Commission. You can do it online. The website's super easy to remember. It's identitytheft.gov, identitytheft.gov. You can fill out that complaint, and they take you through the whole process. It's really a good website. You also want to file a local police report because you are the victim of a crime, right? And together this creates what's your ID theft report. And this ID theft report is going to make it easier when you're dealing with all the other financial institutions. Really, it's your proof that you're the victim of identity theft. You also want to talk to the credit reporting bureau. So there are 3 major credit reporting bureaus or agencies. That's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. The first thing is to know is you get a free credit report from each of these agencies once a year. So you can spread them out and you can get a free look at your credit report every 4 months. In today's day and age, with the number of data breaches that there have been and the number of scams going around, I think it's a good habit for everybody to get in to be checking their credit every 4 months, if not more. If many people have a service that they use or their credit card will tell them if anything has changed. But if you don't have anything like that, to check it every 4 months. 1, to see for any examples of identity theft, but 2, sometimes there are just errors on your credit report, right? A payment that you made on time is marked as late. A payment that you made is marked as never having come in, right? That are affecting your credit. So you want to dispute anything like that as well. And you can call the credit reporting agencies, or you can go to annualcreditreport.com to get these 3 free credit reports. You all see other websites and other services that do a lot of advertising. Credit Karma, freecreditreport.com. You may get that first one for free, but they'll generally then try to sell you a service. The other thing that you can do if you feel that you may be the victim of identity theft, know that you're the victim of identity theft, or just want to take another step to protect yourself, you can place a fraud alert on your credit report. That fraud alert is what it sounds. It's an alert that goes on your credit report. So anytime a creditor pulls your credit report, they'll see this alert and see that you may feel that you may be the victim of fraud, right? And they're going to take extra steps, or they should take extra steps, to make sure that it's actually you who's applying for this new line of credit. Unfortunately, sometimes folks with fraud alerts, there are still examples of where they're the victim of identity theft. The best way to protect yourself is what's called the security freeze. When you freeze your credit, you stop any hard inquiry into your credit. So any creditor who wants to take a look at your credit before approving you for a loan, for a credit card, for a mortgage, is not going to be able to get a look at it. And so very likely they're not going to approve you, right? So that's going to stop you from being the victim of identity theft. A couple things to be aware of with this security freeze. The first is, for now, because I'm not sure if the governor has signed a new bill yet, but for the moment, it's $5 to freeze your credit and $5 to thaw your credit. So, and that's with each of the credit reporting agencies. So really it's $15 to freeze and $15 to thaw. In light of the Equifax data breach, there was a bill that was just passed by the State House that's going to make this free, right? So hopefully, I don't know exactly when it will take effect, but going forward, it's going to be free to freeze and thaw your credit. The other thing to be aware of is that while a security freeze and freezing your credit stops a scammer, an identity thief, it also stops you from using your credit. So I'll use myself as an example. In the spring, I went through the house buying process, right? My fiance and I bought a house. And we bought it up in Malden, and as I'm sure everyone is aware, the real estate market up there is crazy competitive, right? So one of the things that we needed to send when we made an offer was a pre-qualification letter for a mortgage. If I had a security freeze on my credit, I would not have been able to get that pre-qualification letter, and I would not be living in the house I'm living in today, right? Because they would have moved on to someone who had it. So it's not to say don't do it, it's just to be aware if you want to refinance, you want a new credit card, you know you're going to buy a new car, you need a new auto loan, just to be aware that if you have a freeze on your credit, you need to thaw that before you're going to be approved yourself for your credit. The other thing to be aware of is, we're talking about identity theft and an identity thief opening up a new line of credit, and we spend the most time talking about that because you may not see that an identity thief has opened up a new line of credit until they've already maxed out the credit card that they opened in your name. It's also important to remember they can get other information about you that is a little bit more visible, right? So you want to tell your credit card companies. You might want to get a new credit card number if there's some reason you believe that you're the victim of identity good, that someone has your credit card there. Your bank accounts, your retirement and investment accounts, that they don't pull the funds out of there before you realize that they had access to that information. And also things like cable, internet, phone providers, letting them know so you're not paying for somebody's cable or somebody's phone line, right? That you may be the victim of identity theft, and so they take extra steps to make sure that it's actually you who wants this new thing. So just a quick overview. Again, you can create that ID theft report, the identity theft affidavit, and the police report. Call the credit reporting bureaus, put that fraud alert on, put that security freeze, whatever you'd like, and call your creditors as well. An apple a day, right? The prevention is really the best medicine here, right? With scams, with identity theft, there are some steps you can take, but stopping it before it happens is really the best way to protect yourself. So that's all that, oh, I have our phone number here, but I have the phone numbers that I'm going to pass out. But just be aware that card division that I mentioned earlier, that's their phone number. It's our consumer hotline. They know all this information as well. If you're going through it, you want to talk to somebody in a little bit more detail, you know someone is going through it, you want to give this information to them, they can give a call. That line is open 10 to 4, Monday through Friday. We also have our website up here. It doesn't look like this anymore. We've now switched the server that it's on. One of my other jobs at the office is writing all the new content for the new website. So hopefully it's really good. Hopefully we do have some good information about identity theft up there. If you need a refresher or want to refer anyone there, our website is just mass.gov/AGO, as an Attorney General's office. And these are just phone numbers here, but I'm going to pass those out. Also be aware of, other things that we can give a presentation on. If you like this presentation, we can do this one other places, but any of the things that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, right? Presentation on civil rights, the earned sick time law, not so new anymore, but we can do a presentation on that, or the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, workers' rights, scams, contracts, landlord-tenant rights, general retail rights. We can give presentations on all that information, and so you can give our office a call about that. That is actually the last slide. So with that, thank you again so much for having me. If anybody has any questions, happy to take them now. Yes.